Peace, family. So I'm back with another one. So today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to my chosen ones about the enemy and the opposition when they say, all I want is this one thing. All I ask is this one thing. You know, anytime somebody puts all in front of one, that doesn't even sound like it makes sense, does it? I just want all and then one. Do you want it all or do you want one? And I usually take the first word, all, opposed from one. I want it all. So what brought me to this subject today was just diving in on some of my past experiences. And I was just thinking about how some of the people that I dealt with, how when they would come into my energy and they wanted to figure out how they can get back in or to get in for the first time to control me. And the saying was always, all I ask is this one thing, or can you not just do that one thing? But I always remember, like, the one thing sometimes can outweigh whatever the multiple things are. So like, this one tree, the big one, is gonna outweigh this one blade of grass. So when you say all I want is this one thing, like, you have to have you have to know the validity, you have to know the density of this one thing that you're asking. You have to know the meaning and the value of this one thing you're asking. And what I mean by saying this is, it just kind of brings me to the space, because we're all in this witchy western shit where we're trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm gonna isolate myself, but I don't want to be alone. But I want to engage with people, and I want to build a family, or I want to build a tribe. We want to do these things, but then we're being told that we have to isolate, but it's also subtle signs that's showing us we need to remove or isolate ourselves from certain beings and entities and locations. So, for a better example of the I only ask for one thing kind of thing, right? So, recently, I would say, like, within the past month or two, I guess my BM has been going through some changes over there in her field. So my daughter has been asking me more questions just about, you know, mommy or whatever. And when she's with mommy is allowing her to call me and shit sometimes now. So my daughter asked if we could get together, you know, just as mom and dad and daughter, and do some things. Not as a couple or as together, you know, just kind of as, my daughter memory didn't start until she started school, and that's right when we separated, so she don't even remember a whole lot of us engaging and interacting. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm mature enough. I've been in this place of growing and ascending long enough. I understand it's a war. You know, one day, 2 days out the month is not the end of the world. You know what I'm saying? I've been separated for over 2 years now. It hasn't been nothing done physical in there. So for me, I'm like, all right, let me see how I can help and heal, you know, myself, and also help and heal my daughter in the process. And if I can help her mom some in the process over there in the field she's in, then cool. You know what I'm saying? I'm a warrior, so I'm always fighting. It doesn't matter if I'm fighting for somebody or against somebody. I'm a warrior, so I'm a fighter. It's what I do. But she would like to get back in my space, which is understandable. You know, most of them that come across my energy already realize once they leave that it was their ideology and their belief system that fucked everything up to begin with. So this one wants to kind of get back in my space, but it's already been some things that's happened in the spiritual world where my spirit just won't allow it. Now, I would be there to, you know, be able to assist and help her, because that's the mother of my child and she is mommy. So I don't my daughter needs her. Simple process. So the statement of all I want is this one thing is, what brought me to it was the statement that was placed when me and her was conversating, and it wasn't like no bad argument or fighting. It was just her trying to figure out how she could get back in my space, but also not take the steps to kind of show that, hey, I'm growing, I'm a changed being, but just throw the information out there and then make it seem as if, okay, well, all I want is this one thing. I don't want you talking to females or women or some shit like that, or like whatever that weird shit is. But you have to understand that one thing that you're asking for, it doesn't even go into my box, because you haven't even positioned yourself to have any validity on all I want is that one thing. In my world, I have a different belief system than you. So for me, if we've already done this and been in each other's energy, you can approach me, but it will not get no acknowledgement of all you want is this one thing, when it's been a bunch of spiritual needs over here that haven't even been met. But I only use that as an example because I still engage with her. I still got love for my BM. It's not no hate or animosity there. It's just I understand it's a whole opposition in there, so I have to battle with that on top of trying to make sure my daughter is aware and help and teach. It's a whole process when you are parenting in between this process. So a lot of the times you will find yourself having to push your feelings to the side and look at the logic. You know, you'll have to put the equations and the problems together. You'll have to take the A plus B plus C times the 1, multiply it by Pythagorean theorem, you know, add a fucking just it's a whole lot of shit that you have to do and be aware of when you're parenting and doing these things. You know what I'm saying? Because once you are in that position, there is no taking it back. So a lot of people can be like, oh yeah, I just don't deal with the other person. Bullshit. You can minimize how much you deal with them unless you're just not in their lives. But it's other people that I've ran across too that you know, they have this ideology of the Western world and the shit that's been placed on them. So what I took from learning while engaging some of the people who I've asked these kind of questions to, and then rehabbing this conversation with my BM, it's like their ideology comes from their insecurities and it comes from the opposition. So for me, I've never been concerned with meeting a female or a woman and being in her energy, but telling her, hey, I don't want you doing, you cannot do what all I ask for is. The difference when I'm in somebody's space on that manner as a male, things apply differently. I'm a male, you're a female. We do not have the same processor, so the rules apply differently. I know that's hard for people to fathom because they want him to be him and she to be she, him, she's to be everywhere. But in my reality, in the natural flow of life, you can see the male animals operate a little bit more differently than the females. Not saying that it's a bad thing. Those two go hand in hand like yin and yang, like a puzzle piece. Like you take the broken hearts and you put them together. We go together. But when you are more concerned with controlling somebody and the people that they engage and deal with, that means that you aren't focused on all the fuck shit you got going on in you, all the witchy shit you're doing, all the other shit. See, when I get into these conversations and have these things going on in real lifetime, I ask these questions like, okay, you said, oh, I want to be in a monogamous relationship. That's cool. It's nothing wrong with that. But as a female, you have to find a great leader. You can try to convince any male that you want to convince, but every male isn't in that department. Simple process. You have some male who have the luxury of having a variety because they are a valuable being. They know how to do a lot of shit in the physical world. They're helpful, healing, and people gravitate towards that. Then you got other beings who don't really like the light. Everybody already knows, hey, well, they're the quote-unquote, the good guy is the beta male. There are good guys who are very straightforward and honest. I don't like using that good guy shit because I rather fuck with honest beings. I don't give a fuck about being, you know, good in that department. You know, I just rather be honest because sometimes all the communication isn't good. Sometimes the communication is bad, but it's honest communication. It's helpful and it's healing. But when you in that space where they saying, oh, I just need this one thing, I just want to do that thing, and I just, like, you basing it off of experience, what you've been through, you basing it off of TV, and you're basing it off of the shit you see around you. When I talk to these people now, I ask them questions. Where do your belief system come from? Where do you get these ideologies come from? Like, you're in a Western world, so I understand why you feel this way. But can you pinpoint something else to me as far as why you feel this way opposed from just because? You know? That's not a legitimate answer just because they're doing it over there. You know what I'm saying? Or I want my own. I. It's just so many I's and me's and not enough we's. You know? And the thing is, it's like, even when you talk about the isolation thing, how the fuck do you isolate in the Western world? Especially if you got a job, if you're in a town where you got your whole family around, you grew up there, you got friends, peers, all that shit. Like, you have to literally go into a cubby like this small to try to isolate. You know what I'm saying? But even still then, it's not isolating. It's more so of this is either like a hideout or a more peaceful space for you to be in. It's like a hideout or a more peaceful space. Because when you think about it, like, in order to isolate yourself, isolation, you're not dealing with any people. That means you're probably cooking your food yourself, growing your food. You're doing all of the above yourself. You know what I'm saying? But people will be like, yeah, I isolate myself. How? You go to the gas station and get gas. There's people there. It's not set up to more where you can just pay, or where you can pump and then go. Now you have to pay first. Gas stations didn't always used to be pay first. You used to be able to pump first and then pay. Because I remember you be trying not to motherfucking go 1 or 2 cents over because you don't know if you got any goddamn change. And now you got to break a whole nother bill because you went over $12.02. You know what I'm saying? Like, just understanding people belief systems and ideologies, where they come from, it'll save you time and it'll help you, like, be able to process the information and ask the right questions while you're in that space. That's one of the most hugest things I can think of that is, like, super detrimental, and it helps me out a whole lot. And it helps me also keep my energy balanced while I'm communicating. While this person up here working their energy up. So my BM, I used to have these talks with her before when we was in that space, years ago when we actually used to do this. But I would listen to her, I would take it in more because I didn't have my own other information and ideology. I just kept thinking, well, I did say I want to be with her, and I do want to be monogamy. I don't care about, like, it's just certain things that's just not as important, but they put more weight on it. I'll just leave it at that. So we would have these talks before, she would get more leeway because I didn't have my own understanding of the natural flow of things. I just knew that, all right, well, if I decide to do this with them, then I put my word on it, so then that means I should, which is right. You know what I'm saying? If I wanted to maneuver my relationships differently, I should be more upfront about it. You know what I'm saying? But now, it's not 2014 or 15 anymore. You know what I'm saying? So now it's 2022. So you're coming at me with the same ideology about what you want. That's cool for you to want it. I'm not mad. I'm not knocking it. But I know for me, following the natural flow and being a leader and doing all the things I'm supposed to do as a male, all that shit you're saying comes secondary. You have to fit into this puzzle. It's no different than what I got to teach my daughter. She has to fit into her team leader's puzzle. You know what I'm saying? It's not nothing to knock her, to put her down, or push her. She's still going to be great and amazing. But you have to have structure. Simple process. You have to have structure. It is needed. Without the structure, this is what's going to be going on. My BM was not arguing, but we was talking about it, and it was like points coming up, and I could feel her energy riding about, yeah, well, this is what I want. I don't want to be, I want my own person, and blah, blah, all this fucking fantasizing and fetish Fantasizing and fetishizing. You know what I'm saying? We get fetishized. So it's like, once you start formulating a different belief system, then it makes sense. But what happens is, with me diving deep, now I'm like, okay, with her making these statements and saying these things, because it's always good to learn, you know. That's why we was having a conversation. It's just great to learn. It don't matter how it flows, if it's going in the best direction or not. The thing is now is we're having these conversations. These shits wasn't being had before. So my thing is now is research. Look it up. See what you're supposed to be doing. See what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. So maybe you could tell me something about myself. Oh, I figured this out and I saw this. Well, since you're Mr. Follow the Natural Flow, male should be doing this. Bitch, I don't give a fuck if you drop that information to me. I probably missed it because I was focused on something else. So if you do, that is more enlightenment for me. Great. Yes, that was one less thing I had to look into, and it's been brought to my attention, and now I can work on it. Simple process, you know what I'm saying? But when they do that, all I ask for is one thing. It's usually, spiritually, it's usually way more weight than just that physical one blade of grass that they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? It's usually a whole lot of weight. And just being mindful of that, you know what I'm saying? You have to make sure that you're asking the right questions when you're in that space, and make sure you're trying to direct them into a healthier solution, something that would be more beneficial to their belief system, opposed from saying, yeah, I just want this because I've experienced it. In okay, well, you have to think about it. You haven't been a very honest being yourself. You haven't been a very one-man person yourself. It's fucking women out here that got 1,000 poles running in and out of them, and they are communicating outwardly like the last person I communicated with, and I had the conversation, I addressed it, I talked to y'all guys about it up here, about saying girls should explore their sexuality. Well, my BM was basically saying, well, when you met me, I was young, I didn't know anything. So to me, it's like, motherfucker, when I played basketball for my high school team, I didn't know their strategies, but I learned it. I didn't just say, oh, I don't know it, and then transfer to another school. I learned it. And that's actually better. So my BM was with me, didn't have a whole lot of trauma, created trauma in the situation. We separated, decided to create more trauma and learn some things as well in the process. She did learn a couple things in the process as well. But now I want to come back. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you don't went and experience multiple niggas, and now you want to come back over here with some shit that you learned over there and tell me all I want to do is, all I just ask is, you got to keep them questions and those thoughts to yourself. I'm not mad at it, but keep it to yourself. There's a lot of stuff that I think about that I don't always say out loud, but certain things do need to be addressed. You know what I'm saying? It's a pretty deep subject. I could be running this thing up all day, but I try to keep it balanced, you know what I'm saying? So I might do a part 2 to this. We'll see how the universe flows and what they tell me, you know what I'm saying? But outside of that, tapping everything down below. Peace and love to the kings and queens.